Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unfair Rival. I am your host, John, over at Rival Studios, and it's another gorgeous day in St. Louis. Probably one of our last. I don't know. Is it great weather out there in Kansas City, Chad? I don't know, but it's great over here. So
It's sunny at the moment, but apparently we're getting one of those fall Midwest thunderstorms the rest of the day. So,
love it. So it's also a great day because it's also my birthday.
oh
So
hey, happy birthday!
I have made it a whole 34 revolutions around the sun. So you may be asking, well, why in the world would I be doing this on my birthday? Because I'm so committed to Unfair Rival. I just tell you. No, truth is, you never really get a day off as a small business owner. Chad, I'm sure you're going to quickly be learning that. So I don't want to take your thunder, though. Welcome to today's episode. We have got the one and the only Chad Reynolds, from the former brand director over at Sporting KC. So, Chad, why don't you give us a quick bio about yourself and kind of your experience over there and a brief blurb?
Yeah. So, well, John, first off, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do this. Thanks for doing this on your birthday. Appreciate that. I'm also an October baby, although I've got a few more rotations around the sun than you do. I did some medical work the other day, and
The gray
the
hair
little
gives it away, so it makes it
well,
seem like I've got more.
I got the hat on because I don't have the hair. That's the problem. It's going away quickly. No, I did some medical work the other day, and like on the electronic form at the top, it said 40M, and I was like, "Who the heck is 40?" Oh God, I'm 40. So that just happened, a couple weeks ago. No, well, hey man, again, thank you for having me. My name is Chad Reynolds. As John mentioned, I was the brand director, senior director of brand at Sporting Kansas City in Major League Soccer up until June of this year. I was at Sporting for 17 and a half seasons. So I was at Sporting Kansas City.
Man, what a tenure. Give some
Yeah.
claps to that, man. That's awesome.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it was a hell of a ride. I enjoyed every minute of it. I'm really, really happy, proud of everything we did there. So why leave? Well, I've got two 13-week-old twins sleeping in a room on the other side of this wall here. So I've got two little babies at home, James and Eleanor. They're absolutely the light of our lives, but they also take up all of our time. And the thing about sports is, people sometimes say, oh, it's a young man's game. I don't think it's a young man's game. I think it's, you just got to have the energy and the willingness and the commitment to put in the hours and the nights and weekends. And as we change in our lives, our priorities change. And in my case, nothing is going to be a bigger priority than being around for those two as much as I can be. So
As it should be, as it should be. So that's admirable.
yeah, I mean, man, it's been amazing. And it's been really amazing to I am out on my own now. I do my own brand and marketing consulting, and it's been amazing to be my own boss for the first 13 weeks of their lives, because it has allowed me to be home for them. It has allowed me to be present for everything, and the good, the bad. As John's aware, one of my twins, my son James, just spent 2 weeks in the hospital, and it was terrible. It was awful, but it was. I'm so glad I was able to be there, and mom was able to be there, and we could split that time. He's great now. Everything is fine. It was touch and go for a minute, but once he got healthy, it was mostly just kind of observation and meds. James is amazing. You'd never know it looking at the kid. He'll never know he spent 2 weeks in the hospital, which is, good for him growing up. But all of that to bring it back to what I do. I'm a brand and marketing guy. My background is journalism and design. I was at Sporting, previously the Wizards, for 17 years, as I said. I led the creative and content teams at Sporting. So all of the incredible imagery and video and things you might see coming on social media in the stadium, we'll talk a little bit about today, video board, etc. When I started in 2006, I was a graphic design department of one. And there were 13 of us on staff when I started in December of 06 at the Kansas City Wizards. And now there's more than 200 full-time staffers. And my team, my creative and brand team, was 14. So it was kind of crazy to have seen the growth. And I've seen some shit, as they say. I was really, really lucky to be a part of leading the design on the rebrand from Kansas City Wizards to Sporting Kansas City, and then be involved in some really incredible projects like probably the one I'm the most proud of is helping bring the World Cup to Kansas City.
Yeah, and that's coming up, so
Yeah.
it'll be here before you know it. So that's awesome, man. Well, yeah, great to have you today. So to kind of jump into what we're going to be talking about. So soccer season is wrapping up. We're in the middle of playoffs. So there's buzz in the air. There's lots going on. Not for every team, but for you that are left. So as teams are kind of going into off season, if there will be soon, or if they're still in playoffs, or if they're already in off season, if their season ended, everyone's always kind of clamoring, always chomping at the bit. What's new? What's latest? How do we improve match day experience? Now, I'll tell you, I'm not a big soccer guy. I don't admit that, but I'm learning. I'm open to it. I'm learning. You guys got a lot of lingo that they don't have in other sports. You call it a pitch. You call it a match. You call it all these kinds of things. It's not wins and losses. I still don't understand that. Like, can we not just get the number like every other sport in America?
No, points.
Like,
hockey does points. You can just
I need
extrapolate.
to brush up. So that'll be a separate session. You can give me a tutorial on all things soccer. So anyway, but bringing it back to match day experience, that's always a buzzing topic of, okay, what do we do well? What's new? What can we do better going into the season? So I know that's always a big debrief, for every team, soccer and other teams alike at the end of their season. So I thought this was a perfect opportunity, perfect timing to have this show. Where you can really dive into how do teams elevate their match day experience. Like, what was that like for you doing it for so many years at Sporting? So I'm sure there's so much that we could jump into. We've only got a little bit of time here today, so hopefully we can boil it down to 3 good nuggets, 3 good secrets about how to improve match day experience. So I don't want to steal your thunder, the chat. So why don't you go ahead and kick us off with secret number 1 of improve or maximizing the match day experience.
Well, before we even talk about the secret, I mean, this is not a secret. You kind of hit the nail on the head. Now's the time to talk about it. You got to start planning. If you're not out in front of it, it'll happen to you. And you should be planning now, if not earlier, for 2025 in the soccer world right now, which is always fun because you're nearing the end of the season. You're nearing the playoffs. You're kind of getting involved in all of that. And then you're looking ahead. Half of your team is focused not on what's going on right now. They're focused on the next season, but that's the only way to make it happen, because soccer season is so stinking long. I think last season we got knocked out of the playoffs on, was it November 20? It was November 20 something. We got knocked out of the playoffs, and I was on a plane to preseason on January 4th. Like, it just doesn't, you know what I mean? Maybe January 14. Like, there's just no time, right? And so if you wait, you're host. So now is the time to actually be talking about it. I envy my friends in like the NFL world who, they've got that long off season and they can plan, and everybody, like, they get so much time to be creative. It's really cool, and they take advantage of it. I wish we had that in the soccer world.
It is an unusually short off season, I will say, especially if you go deep into playoffs. They're wrapping up early November, media days, kind of early mid January for most teams, and then you're flipping right around and starting again in February. So it is an unusually short off season. I will give you that.
I think I saw a thing the other day that there's a new team coming into MLS in San Diego, and St. Louis is actually one of their first matches, and I think they play them on like February 21 or something crazy,
ridiculously cold is what it is going to be.
Yeah, and Sporting plays in CONCACAF Champions Cup this next year, and I think that is like February 4th which it's freaking cold in Kansas City on February 4th. I promise you that. But,
and is here as well. Yeah. So.
Cool. Okay, sorry. Secrets, actual secrets to match day.
Planning is the pre-secret. Now we're going to jump into the real secrets.
Yeah. Well, and I'll like, I'm going to kind of bury. I won't bury the lead. I will do this backwards. Actually, what I think is honestly the biggest secret, the what I would call secret number 3, and we'll come back to it, is the most important thing. And John, you and I were emailing about this just last week. If you haven't seen the pretty incredible Mr. McMahon documentary floating around out on Netflix about Vince McMahon and WWE.
I need to see it. Now that you bring that up again, I need to put it on the list.
Dude, it's so good. I mean, it's, you don't even need to be into wrestling. It's almost a soap opera, but it's but I'm not a big wrestling guy. I never really was, but for my money, nobody does sports entertainment, live sports entertainment presentations on TV and live better than the folks at WWE and professional wrestling in general. It's a show unlike anything else. It's really an impressive production. But in that world, there's an interview in one of the episodes of that documentary where they're talking to Stone Cold Steve Austin, and he just says emotions are when you sell tickets. And it kind of stuck with me because it's just like that's a lot of what we're talking about, right? Is like emotions bring people in the door. Emotions get people to pay attention. Emotions are what sells tickets. In their world, that can be good, it can be bad, it can be angry, it can be whatever. In kind of the match pres or game pres world that I think of in sports, I always come back to this. Ask anybody to tell you their favorite sports memory, and nobody ever really mentions the final score of a game, right? Like they 9 times out of 10, when you ask somebody their favorite sports memory, they're going to spend most of their time talking about who they were with and how that moment and that game and that experience made them feel. And it's all about experience, right? It's all about like that story for them becomes emotional. It's their favorite sports memory. My favorite sports memories are all about, like the Royals making the playoffs for the first time in 30 years. And my buddy and I just bawling our eyes out, when the Royals made the World Series, or my dad taking me to a game between Nolan Ryan and Brett Saberhagen at Kauffman Stadium. I skipped school. It was an afternoon game and it went 18 innings. And we spent the second 9 innings. Yeah, it was incredible. We spent the second 9 innings down in the front row because everybody left. And it was just like, no, we saw an 18-inning baseball game. My mom was pissed. This is the era pre-cell phone. She's like, where the hell were these guys all day? We showed up at like 7:00 that night. It was a 1:00 first pitch. But that's what I genuinely do not remember who won that Royals Rangers game. No idea. But I know I saw Brett Saberhagen and Nolan Ryan 18-inning game with my dad. You know what I mean? And like, so anyway, I come back to that. Like, people's favorite sports memories are never about the game itself. They're never about the final score. They're about all the other stuff that comes around with it, because that's sports are emotional at the end of the day. That's why we do this. If we didn't live and die with our teams, we wouldn't be playing this game, or we wouldn't be spending money as fans. So
that increasing amounts of money year after year.
No kidding. No kidding. But like that to me is we'll call it secret 3, but it's the big secret, right? It's like you got it. It all flows from that. But secret 1, to kind of do it backwards, quote unquote, it starts in the parking lot. And I think that's an interesting idea, and you can take that as literally as you want, right? You can literally, I mean, people's experience on a match day or a game day does start the moment they pull into that parking lot. If the ticket taker or the parking taker is, rude to them, and then they're directed into a crappy spot because they did, like they're off to a bad start right away, right? Like, so it always starts from the moment people first experience whatever interaction they're going to have with your brand, or in this case, your game day. Because any really good show like this is not just the people up in the control room, right? It's not just the videos that were made. It's not just the sound. It takes coordination. It takes collaboration. It takes the ops team, the ticketing team, the guest services team, the social media team, the marketing team, everybody on and on has got to be on the same page and got to be kind of pulling the cart the same direction. Because like, if you're going to do a stunt or a magic moment or something like that, a lights out or anything like that, you can't do it right or to its, zenith if those people aren't on the same page and know what's going on. Like, if the guest services team doesn't know you're killing the lights at that point, they're not prepared for it. Somebody, trips down an aisle, or they're not prepared to help direct people, like all of those kinds of things that have to come into play. Right. So planning, coordination is such a huge part of that. And I was trained in what they call the Disney model. Literally we went through Disney training, magic moment training. And the 2 examples that have always stuck with me from that, one, we were literally taught in Disney training when they opened Disneyland in 1960, whatever, Disneyland in California. There was like a BB gun shooting range in Frontierland. And, like you pay a quarter, you get little like pellets, and you shoot at like little tin targets, little red targets all day long. Pink, 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 pink. Right.
Yep.
And the beauty of Disneyland, let's talk about planning again. they close the park from the back to the front. You know, the land in the back of the park closes earlier, and then the next one and the next one. So they drive you to Main Street for the parade and all the shops, the gift shops, and everything as you exit.
Mm.
It's a brilliant idea. Well, so Frontierland closes earlier, right? It closes at 10 o'clock. Everything else closes at midnight. 10 o'clock, 10:01. A crew of 13 people would roll into this BB gun shooting range and repaint it by hand every night. Because Walt Disney believed it may not be your first day at Disneyland, but it's somebody's first day at Disneyland, and it should look like it did the day it opened. Right. And like that is that kind of like, it takes everybody, it takes a plan, it starts in the parking lot thought that is just, first off, it's crazy, but that's why they're Disney. You know, that's why they are what they are.
So you could apply that same philosophy to games. You know,
Everything.
obviously for the workers and staff and employees, like obviously this could be their countless, you know, umpteenth game. But for someone, it's their first game, and that's a really neat perspective to always take into every game, to try to you know, pay attention to all the details and not overlook things that can easily get overlooked when you're, you know, 30-40 game season.
Yeah, I mean, you see that kid with the I don't know, hey, Patrick Mahomes, it's my first game, can I have your glove, or, you know, like jersey or whatever, like sign. Somebody should see that. Guest service should see that. Somebody on a camera should see that. I don't care if it's like a contract photographer. Somebody sees that, right? Mm-hmm. They got to let the social media team know. They got to let the guest services team know. They got to let the video board team know. Because if you really want to maximize that moment for the kid and then for the storytelling, you got to capture that, and you got to capture it in the right ways. And you got to, so like all of that, it really does kind of come together. And the other example I'll give of that, and it's still Disney, but I don't know, John, are you a Star Wars guy?
No, not so much. No. Not so much.
So thankfully,
I never got into it.
Yeah, I don't think you need to be into it to appreciate this. They've got this crazy Star Wars land there at Disney World, right? And they did two things with it. Number one, they said, okay, we want to go out and look at all the most immersive places in the world, like immersive theme park places in the world, right? And so everybody went to like Harry Potter Land. It was the pinnacle at the time. It was like, okay, you got to start there. What their Disney people noticed was, as they're walking through Harry Potter World, is there's Harry Potter stuff everywhere. Like everything is branded with Harry Potter, which is, it's amazing, right? But that's not immersive. So when they built the Star Wars, the Galaxy's Edge, as it's called, the rule was there's not a Star Wars logo in it. There's not a picture of Luke. There's not a picture of Leia. There's not like, you're not running into, you know, Han Solo, like merchandise. Mm-hmm. You can buy all that stuff as you exit through the gift shop as you're leaving the land. But in the land, it's immersive. Everything is in galactic language and in English and all of this kind of stuff. You might run into Luke or Leia or Rey, but they're going to be a costumed actor. It's going to be that person. And there's only going to be one of them. And so what they will do is they will literally spot a kid coming through the front gate of Disney World or Disneyland. They've got one of both places, in a costume. Let's say they're dressed like, you know, a little girl dressed like Rey from the new Star Wars movies. Mm-hmm. They will spot that, and they will follow that kid until that little kid gets into Star Wars land. And then within the first 15, 20 minutes, it's like a rule, that kid will have an interaction with a costumed character, whether that is Darth Vader or if she's on that day, the actress who plays Rey. You know, like that kind of planning and that kind of coordination is, again, it comes back to emotions. It comes back to
I mean, talk about what a memory that would have created for somebody. So I'm curious, kind of bringing this to the match day experience. Like, what's one or two things that you guys did at Sporting that you feel like really made a big difference in this thoughtful planning and attention to detail? Like, was there one or two softballs that, you know, that you could think of? They're like, man, we implemented this, we did this, and this really made a big difference in our kind of memorable experience.
Well, I mean, this is a simple one, and I don't know that it made even a big difference. It was just kind of low hanging fruit. Is the my first sporting match, or, you know, like you make it available, you make people know, let parents know. Oh, hey, if it's your first match, swing by the guest services thing. We'll get you a button, a pin, a pennant, a whatever. And so one of my favorite photos we ever got at Sporting while I was there it's a picture of probably a 2-3-year-old kid. And he's wearing his little like button, you know, circular button that his parents put on him that says "My First Sporting Match." And he's just throwing confetti in the air. facing not the field. He's like facing up into the thing and like into the stands. And I always thought like the reason I love that photo so much was because that kid's parents, again, have no clue what the final score was of that game between
Right.
I happen to know it was the Portland Timbers Sporting Kansas City in like October of 2019. They don't know what the final score was, and they don't care what the final score was. Their memory of that game, that kid's first game, is him caring more about the confetti that's flying through the air than he does about what's going on in the field, because he's 2 or 3 years old, right? So like those kinds of things matter for parents, and they matter for people, and they matter for adults. Another one, I kind of alluded to it earlier. The moment you see that kid or that adult or whatever with a sign that says, "Hey, Johnny Russell, can I have your jersey?" Like, you got to figure out a way to get that to coordinate that, if at all possible. If the player is up for it, make that kind of a thing happen. And so we had a kid who would show up at games dressed like Johnny Russell. Johnny Russell was a Scottish right winger for Sporting. Great beard, tattooed arm, like great hair, all this kind of stuff. This kid was 6 years old, and mini Johnny Russell, we called him. He would show up to games completely dressed, full on with like the arm sleeve, like tattoo, costume. And he showed up 2 or 3 times, and we couldn't coordinate something. We finally figured it out, and we got like Johnny Russell and mini Johnny Russell together. And I swear to you, they are like friends to this day. And I happen to know the kid and his parents now because of it. I mean, shout out Corbin. But like that, those kinds of things matter to people, right? And they're going to be lifelong fans because of it. And Corbin has a chance to be a pretty good young soccer player in his own right. His parents built a mini soccer gym in their basement and painted the wall to look like the championship wall at Children's Mercy Park, because that's how big of a fan he became. So like, that's what I mean. Those kinds of things, if you can take advantage of those, it matters. And again, it does take everybody. It's your guest services team. It's your, it's your social media, your marketing.
Thinking too, the lifelong, fans that you can develop as a result of these intentional, thoughtful moments that, I want to say they don't cost anything, but they're virtually free or, extremely inexpensive, where you have the opportunity to make a big impression on a young fan and potentially create a lifelong fan. So I could definitely see how really paying attention to the thoughtful moments and the thoughtful experiences all throughout the game from start to finish. You have so many opportunities every game to do that. You're just creating new generations of fans. And also, in addition, of course, not forgetting about the older ones, but I'm just thinking like, life cycle of a fan here. You could really impact a lot of future generations by doing these type of things.
Well, Jerry Seinfeld had an old stand-up bit about sports called "We Cheer for Clothes," and his point is that like, your favorite player can be on this team, and then the next year he's traded to this team, and he shows up and you start booing him, right? And it's just like, heck, what was it? Devontae Adams just played the Pittsburgh Steelers 2 weeks in a row. Once for the for the Raiders and once for the Jets, and like, like that kind of thing can happen. You have to be able to get past. We as sports marketers, we have to be able to drive fans to care enough that they actually are willing to cheer for the clothes over the players on the field, right? Because otherwise, I use this analogy a lot. I grew up a huge baseball fan. Otherwise, my last Royals game would have been in 1993 when George Brett retired, right? Like, I mean, that would have been it, because I grew up pretending to be George Brett in my backyard. All I ever wanted to be was George Brett. And George Brett retires, I'm still a Royals fan, So like, you have to be able to build a bigger fandom than that. One of the things that our ownership group asked us when we were rebranding the Wizards to what became Sporting was, how do we build a brand that people feel like they're a part of rather than a fan of? And I think that's really powerful. That was a question that stuck with me to this day. So yeah, I mean, that's really kind of number one.
I'm writing that down. Build a brand people want to be a part of,
rather than a fan of.
Not just a fan of.
Yep. Yeah. And sports is uniquely, you and I talked about this, sports is uniquely positioned to do that, right? This is the only industry in the world where people say "we" when they're talking about your product on the field. Like the example I always give in this world is I don't care how big of a diehard sneakerhead you are. Like you can wait outside a Foot Locker for 5 days in the cold for, the newest, Jordan colorway to drop. But you don't like walk out of that Foot Locker and text your friends and say, we just got new J's. You say, I just got those new J's, right? But if you walk out of Children's Mercy Park or Arrowhead Stadium or whatever, and your team won that night, you're saying we, and you're calling and texting your friends like we won. Like that is super powerful. So that's what I mean. Like, how do you build a brand that people can feel like a part of rather than a fan of? It's a really cool thing that will always stick with me. And it's not exclusive to sports. There's ways to do it outside of sports. The best example I always give outside of sports is how many times have you heard somebody say they have a Starbucks addiction, right? Like not a coffee addiction. I have a Starbucks
That's my wife.
addiction.
I hear it about every other day.
I have a Starbucks addiction. That's their version of the same thing, right? That's their version of we. So
right.
So that's secret great. One. Secret one is it starts in the parking lot.
Let's keep it rolling. Hit us with number 2.
Have a plan. Have a plan, and that's a to me that's a it's they're all related, right? They're all going to be interrelated, but here's what I mean by that. So often you'll have, you work in the sports video production business. How many times have you heard somebody had a client say something like, I just need a hype video, like I just need a hype cut. No, you don't just need a hype cut. What are you trying to do with that hype cut? Let's talk about like what emotion are we trying to, it comes back to emotions, right? What emotion are we trying to convey? How are we trying to make people feel? What are we trying to get people to do with that? Because even the hypiest of hype cuts should have a goal and have a reason. And I think that I loved what you guys did with the Indiana University football stuff. And what I watched that video, and maybe it's because they're playing great football and all of that, but I watched that video. it helps. Winning helps. Okay, secret 3: winning helps. No, it does. That ain't a secret. No, but I watched that video, and what I see is this is a new era of Indiana football. Like that's the vibe I get, and I haven't read the brief. I haven't seen it in the stadium. I haven't, what I mean? I've just seen it float around social media, but that's the vibe I get. Is this is a new era of Indiana football. We're not this staid, old, tired team that, everybody thinks of. We're not just a basketball school. We are this, so, and so have a plan, right? And at sporting's an easy example for me. Again, we had 3 primary videos that played before a match. And they each were intended to convey a different emotion. This season it was literally about, the first one was very story focused. It was about our fans and our city and togetherness and telling this story of like that, right? Super story focused, tug on the emotions, get people to kind of hit them in the feels about like why they want to cheer for this team and why they want to be there. The Chiefs do an incredible job of their Chiefs Kingdom stuff. If you live in the Midwest, you can't miss the Chiefs Kingdom stuff. And the Chiefs version of this video is all about tailgating, and it's got a voiceover from Paul Rudd or Rob Riggle, but it's very like it's pictures of barbecue and flyovers of the city and Chiefs Kingdom. And the folks at St. Louis City just did a kind of a similar barbecue themed thing, and like, but same kind of vibe, right? We're telling a story about this is who we are. KU basketball does a ridiculous version of it that hasn't really changed in the last 20 years, and it shouldn't, because why fix what ain't broken? It's all about the history of Allen Fieldhouse and the history of, raising banners I'm a KU guy. I went to, I spent my first year.
I'm a K-State guy, so I'm not going to hold it against you for the purposes of this podcast. But
the Octagon of Doom, but honestly, they do a really great version of the next video at Bramlage, where it's all about stadium atmosphere, right? This is an opportunity to be a little bit more hypey, right? You got another video that does this. Arrowhead again is a great example. They've got a video that's just all about the loudest stadium in the world. Easy thing to hang your hat on when you got it, but like that's the whole video is 142.2 decibels, the loudest stadium in the world, and they will hit you over the head with it because they should and they can, and it's a cool story. But what it does is it brings that emotion of like, oh, okay, like this is what like, this is what I should feel like. This is the level I need to be at to be a part of this, you know? And then the third one we did at Sporting was, eventually you got to introduce your team and your players, and you got to figure that out, right? And those videos can come in any order, right? So at Sporting, ours was it went story, introduce team and players, crowd hype before kickoff. Like, that was our story, and everybody kind of has their own run of show. But our introduce the team and players is our version of that Indiana video you did. Now we're showing off what this team is all about, what these players are all about, what their individual personal styles or attitudes, or, like, that's where you show off goal celebrations or touchdown sellies, or, I always like the defensive backs giving the no wag, like all that kind of stuff, like the stuff that they're going to do to the crowd to piss off the opposing team, like that kind of stuff. But you got to go in with the plan, because if you just try to make everything a hype video all the time, you got a bunch of videos that at best all feel the same, right? They all have the same vibe. They all have the same feel. There's an old How I Met Your Mother episode where Barney does a playlist, and he's just like, my playlist is All Rise. If you remember that.
Love it.
Yeah, he's just like
an HIMYM band.
There you go. Yeah. So yeah, you just hear You Give Love a Bad Name 63 times in that episode. But like, but like, he's got the All Rise podcast, and All Rise does not work in a stadium setting. It just, even for the playoffs, even for whatever, it doesn't work, because you got to have some rise and fall. You got to have some emotion. You got to talk to people about different things. And so that's why I say have a plan is secret too, because otherwise, again, at best, everything feels the same, and at worst, it's just a noisy mess, So yeah, that's secret too.
I like that, because I mean, just not really being on the team side and not really thinking through all these different elements and aspects of it. I can definitely see, just from my own experience on the fan side, like going to the game, kind of thinking through this a little more critically about all the different elements that do get me to react and respond, and how, like you're saying, if it's all hype, all the time, like ultimately there's only so much of that you can do. So I can definitely relate, or kind of echo that as well, that there needs to be some thoughtful intentionality with the order of the show and the elements of the show, and how you want to kind of direct that experience. There's someone I was talking to a while back in the industry that they said that they had a colleague that referred to the fans as their puppets.
Yeah.
Where, not that you're like 100% in control of them, but in terms of the overall, emotional experience, the prompt and response experience, so much of it is within your control. Mm-hmm. So you have to have that plan, because if you don't, it's just going to fall flat. Right.
And it's really funny. Like, I think of some of the better atmospheres in sports in America, and I always come back to college football, right? I mean, nothing's like a good Saturday college football. And sometimes you look at it and you think, oh, well, that experience just kind of sells itself. It does it. No, the band plays into it. The student section plays into it. You will never see a stadium go crazier in one single moment than when they play Jump Around at Wisconsin college football, right? Like, and the place goes bonkers.
Or Mr. Brightside now. That seems to be
Mr. Brightside, yeah. But like, but that's so intentional, right? K-State, you're a K-State guy. Sandstorm at Bramlage is a moment, and it has to be a moment, because if you use Sandstorm every TV timeout, Sandstorm stops mattering. It's the boy who cries wolf. So it is. There's a bit of puppetry. There's a bit of but it's all about intentionality and planning. And again, everybody's show is different. Everybody's audience is different. Everybody's stadium is different. So it's not like there's a one size fits all approach for it. Like, nobody should go out and try and rip off Arrowhead Stadium, because nobody else is the loudest stadium in the world. Nobody should rip off Allen Fieldhouse, because nobody else has the history that place has. So you got to have your own version of that. Nobody should rip off Lambeau or Wrigley or Fenway, because they all have their own, vibes and their own, and you should be playing into what makes your fan base and your stadium and everything special. But it always comes back to having a plan.
Yep. No, totally agree. Well, for those that may be jumping in late, we'll do a quick recap here. of what we just hit on the first 2 points here. So, the first one I really love, starting in the parking lot, really planning, being thoughtful from the first touch point to the last touch point, not just from a content standpoint, but from every aspect, from their experience getting in the stadium, throughout the stadium, looking for those intentional opportunities to make impacts, especially on the younger generations and those fans, and just the moments, the sweet moments that you can create, especially for those younger fans, that it literally could be the simplest of things. I mean, the smallest of things that it's like, wow, can create those moments. And certainly in addition to some of the bigger opportunities, if they can be coordinated, like doing the jerseys or the balls or, whatever it is. So just really be always on the lookout. I love what you said there about it may not be your first game, but it's somebody's. I feel like that needs to be on the wall of like every team in America and in their front office.
And it's so easy to take
fresh.
that for granted. It's so easy because, like I said, I was at Sporting 17 years. It's so easy to forget that if you let yourself or you don't prioritize that. You really gotta somebody new comes in, that should be it should be on the wall, because that should be one of the first things you talk about.
Needs to be the motto. So that was great. And then rolling into secret number 2 about just having a plan. I mean, that is a kind of a secret, but not a secret at the same time. It's like the impact that a very thoughtful and intentional plan really goes a long way in terms of kind of like you were saying about the rise and fall of the crowd, emotion and the experience, and kind of that prompt and response, and having things very intentionally thought out, so that it's not to quote your Barney reference from How I Met Your Mother. It's not all rise. You can't hit the all rise playlist. There has to be some ebb and flow. And so that's super important to keep in mind as well. So starts in the parking lot, have a plan. Now we're going to circle back to number 3. So I don't know what else you want to hit about it, but emotions are the ones that sell tickets and bring people in the door. So any parting thoughts, Chad, on the last one about emotions and selling tickets as that being a driving factor?
Tell a story. Whatever that story is. And I kind of just hit on it a little bit. Like, your story is different than somebody else's story. Your brand is different than somebody else's brand. But I really do truly believe that brand building is storytelling. And if you can tell a story, you can get people hooked. Stories by their nature are emotional, right? Nobody tells a story that they don't feel passionate about. That's just not how you don't pick up a book, and if it's not hitting you, keep reading it. You read the book that hits you, right? That makes you feel something, right? So stories by their nature are emotional. And a good way to think about it is this. If you're not storytelling, all you are to somebody is a product on a field. That's all you are. You're a sports team, right? In my world, soccer, a buddy of mine who played in Jimmy Conrad, played in World Cups for the United States, captained the U.S. national team, played almost 20 years in Major League Soccer, describes it as a bunch of guys in short shorts running around kicking a ball in a certain direction. Like, that's the game. That's the product at the end of the day, right? Don't put it in the back of the net. Don't use your hands. Right. If your team is not good, your product is not good. If all you are doing is treating it as a product.
Right.
And that's really true in marketing in general. Like, if you tell people, hey, there's a product here, it's not very good, but you should still buy it, they're not buying it, right? But if you can get people hooked on a story rather than the product itself, you can get people to kind of leave aside the rational decision of, oh, should I buy this product? Is it good? Like, that's binary. That's like, I got to make a choice. And you can get people to keep showing up. In this case, put butts in seats in the sports world. And to use, a St. Louis example, like I think the Cardinals do this just about as well as anybody else. The Cardinals missed the playoffs this year they were close, but not that close, right?
Right. The last couple of years, let's be honest.
but I don't know. And I say this, my dad grew up in Kirkwood. My family lives in, Fenton and Ladue, and I got family all over St. Louis. Very few people are generational diehard fans the way Cardinals fans are generational diehard fans, right? And that is true whether the Cardinals win or they lose. Busch Stadium is full, not to the same extent, but it is full. Last game of the year, I promise you, Busch Stadium is more full than 95% of the baseball stadiums in Major League Baseball if the Cardinals are out of it. because it means something to people. It's emotional. It's a
Right.
story. There is such a big story there, that's just not true about other teams and other sports. And so again, if the product ain't there, you got to give something to people that they want to come and care about. And again, if emotions sell tickets, you got to give people something emotional, because we're marketers, we're video creators, we're whatever. We can't control the product on the field. You know, I was in sports, pro sports for 17 plus years and involved in it long before that. I've not once stepped on the field and put a ball in the back of the net, right? Like, despite as many times as I begged to just give me one chance. I was not built for it. There are not a lot of 5'10" goalkeepers out there. But like, control the controllables in that way. We can't control the product on the field. I can't control Sporting missed the playoffs this year. St. Louis City missed the playoffs this year. Like, the Cardinals missed the play. I can't control that. But what I can control is in many ways some of the emotion that people bring into that stadium, and that they, again, pick up the phone, call their mom on the way out of there, tell them we won. You know, at Sporting, when we win a home match at Children's Mercy Park, the players all go down to one end of the field in front of the cauldron, in front of the diehard supporter stand fans, and they all put their arms around each other and sway back and forth while the fans sing "Oh, When the Wiz Go Marching Into Them." And it's this moment of togetherness that is bigger than anything else. And it's why, like, you know, it gives me goosebumps every time I see it, because that's what this is all about, is that sort of an emotion, right? And so if you can tell a story, you can pull emotion out of people and get them to maybe sometimes forget that, hey, yeah, this team isn't that good this year, or, you know, because it happens. No team is that good every single year. You know, the Chiefs are on the run of runs right now, but in 2011, when we rebranded Sporting Kansas City, the Chiefs went 2-14. And that's part of the reason.
It hasn't always been like that. So
and they couldn't give away tickets.
Yeah,
so, like,
the ebbs and flows.
Yeah, so it's that kind of thing. You got to give people an emotional story to talk about. So yeah, I mean, again, Secret 3 is really Secret 1. Is it comes back to Steve Austin again, and emotions are when you sell tickets. And I think that's like I said, watching that documentary, he said that, and I was like, man, we're about to talk about this, and I'm going to steal it.
Yep. No, that's great. Love it, love it, love it. Well, hey, Chad, this was super awesome. You dropped some great knowledge here. Really, really insightful stuff. Hopefully our viewers found it insightful as well, as they're rolling into off season and out of playoffs, going into preparation and planning for next season. So kudos to you. Thank you. How can people, let's give a plug for you. How can people connect with you, follow you, potentially hire you now that you're on the market? So give your little shameless plug here. How can people connect with you and follow you?
Yeah, you can find me chadreynolds.xyz. We are in startup mode, as I mentioned. I left sports and to go out on my own. I do brand marketing, brand consulting, and a little bit of design, a little bit of website, a little bit of copywriting, a little bit of everything. But chadreynolds.xyz. That site is very much under construction, because, again, I have 13-week-old twins who came up in the middle of all of this. But yeah, if you want to get a hold of me, check it out, chad@chadreynolds.xyz.
Yeah, awesome. Well, everybody, Chad's real deal. Make sure to connect with him, follow him for all things sporting marketing, brand design, everything related. So again, thank you, Chad, so much for today. It was a pleasure, and look forward